On April 2, 1917, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson issued the battle cry, "The world must be made safe for democracy." Many Americans approved of the decision to go to war against Germany and its allies, a government that is running amok. But despite the headlines and propaganda efforts, just as many Americans opposed fighting in the so-called Great War. The U.S. historian Michael Kazin described the anti-war movement in his recent book, War Against War.
It didn't seem like a war that was in the American national interest. It seemed like a war that most Europeans had not wanted to fight in the first place. So there was a sense that if America got involved in the war, it would only make the United States a more militarist country, which is just the fault they saw in the European powers that had gone to war in the first place.
Even so, Kazin says the impact of the war on U.S. society was far-reaching. Some suffragists leveraged women's performance in the workplace to convince Congress they should have the right to vote. Black soldiers, including the Harlem Hellfighters who fought in France, discovered their service did not protect them from racism after the war, and that inspired the work of civil rights activists in the decades ahead. And the U.S. started a long-running debate about what it means to be a global power, economically, militarily, and diplomatically. Wilson had resisted calls to enter the war since it began in 1914. But after a German U-boat torpedoed the cargo ship Aztec on April 1st, getting Congress to declare war was easy. By the time the armistice was signed on November 11, 1918, 116,000 U.S. troops had died, either in combat or because of the flu pandemic. Kazin says that does not mean the anti-war movement had failed.
What the story of the anti-war movement during World War I can teach us is that it's crucial for Americans, for people of any nation, to force their politicians and their media and their businesses, those who run their businesses, to think very carefully about this decision. Because once you decide to go to war, there's no going back.
An important insight 100 years on, especially given that Americans still don't agree on when and why the U.S. should go to war. Rosiland, Al Jazeera, Washington.